want to talk about the blueprint on how to build a team. I got in the business when I was 25 years old, and in my first calendar year, I did about 15 million in business, and I was by myself, and I learned real quick that I needed other people to help leverage my business. I went to try to build a team, and I did it terribly wrong. It was very expensive and time consuming to build a wrong team. And then over the years, I learned, and I really learned how to build a team the right way. And the difference between having a team the bad way and having a team the right way is a huge difference. So really what I want to do is just kind of go over the blueprint today, because teams is such a hot subject in the real estate industry right now. Is everyone's like team this, two people, we're the monster top producing team in the area. Everyone has all these different slogans for teams. I've seen agents really try to build teams the wrong way and it implodes. And I've seen people that build a team a right way and it's really grown and been prosperous. And I always like to say too, a team's really not for everybody. Right? A team is not a solution for everybody, and we're going to go through that. So everybody who knows me, I'm a big quote guy. Jim Collins from a book, Good to Great, one of my favorite books. Faith is the end game, helps you live through the months of years of buildup. When you're building a team, it's like building a business. It takes time. You make mistakes along the way. But if you have the faith in the end result, you'll get to where you want to go. So a couple must reads that help with team building. Again, Good to Great. I'll probably talk about this at every single training with this book. Jim Collins talks about the difference between good and great and uses the example of Eckerd and Walgreens. Eckerd, what they did was they would buy every mom and pop drugstore and slap an Eckerd sign on the front. That was their business model, and they would just went everywhere. Walgreens said, we're not going to go at a different approach. We're going to buy corner properties where there's entrance on both sides of the street on the right-hand side, and we're going to build pharmacies and drugstores. Walgreens are everywhere now, and I haven't seen an Eckerd in years. So what Jim Collins really wants to stress is you have a plan and you stick to it, and that's the difference between good businesses and great businesses. Right? Another great book, Top Grading. Top Grading is a book that helps you with how to interview people. One of the most important parts about building a team is having good, talented people with you. I have interviewed hundreds of people. If you ask the right questions, you definitely can tell the difference between who is talented and who is not. Right? So a lot of people say this, I want to hire an assistant. They must have a real estate license. I say this, I would rather hire somebody who's extremely talented and get their real estate license than have somebody who has a real estate license who's not as talented. Mostly everybody in this room has gotten the real estate license. It's not that tricky. So I'd rather take somebody who, like I said, who's extraordinarily talented and get them licensed, because as we all probably know in this room, there's a lot of people who have a real estate license who might not be the most talented person. So Top Grading will ask you a lot of great questions. We're going to go through a lot of those great questions, but I always say success leaves clues. Whether you're hiring for an admin, an agent, if you get to know somebody's story, usually if they have patterns of success, it's a good indicator whether or not they're going to be successful with you. So with some simple questions, and I'm going to give some examples later, and you guys are going to laugh, but this is all real life examples that I've been through, you can really see who's talented and who's not. Right? Another book I always talk about, I read probably once every other year, the E-Myth Revisited. E-Myth Revisited talks about really systemizing and building a business. He always uses the example of a baker who goes out, she's the best baker in the world. She goes out and opens up her own business. Her business crumbles, and she's just depressed because all she really wants to do is bake. And I think we see this a lot in the real estate industry. We see a realtor who's doing really well, and they're going, all right, well, let me just go out and open up my own office. And then they said, oh, wow, I just really want to sell real estate. Because it's different. I'm gonna ask you guys. You guys are here about team building. Why would anyone in this room want to have a team? What would you see as the benefits?
Leverage other people's time and skills.
Okay, that's good. Leverage. Would anyone want to build a team for a financial reason? Right? Leverage time, financial. So, I want to talk though about, you only hear the upside of having a team. Right? I'm in these Facebook groups or whatever else with like lab coat agents, and you get all these things like, I got 35 buyer's agents, this, everything's great. You never hear the downside of having the team, right? Well, let me give you one of the downside. Time. I always say this too, Bill Gates. Bill Gates can make another $25 billion. Bill Gates can never be 25 again. So to me, his time is just as, if not more valuable than money. So if you go out and say, I'm gonna start a team, and you just hire a bunch of people, there's training, there's a lot of things that go into it, and a lot of wasted time. And if you aren't hiring the right people, and they leave, and you just invested 3 months of your time and energy into it, you lost time, and you lost money. This is another thing that happens. Carl, I want to start a team. Why? I'm going to give the agent the lead, and I'm going to take half the commission. It's going to be so easy. All right. So they hire an agent who's really not a talented agent. Give them the lead. They don't close it. And then the agent's like, yeah, but what did I really lose? Well, I always say the counterpoint. If you took that lead and you ran that lead and you converted that lead and you got the commission, you just lost that commission on that deal. And let's break it down like this. Anyone here spend money on Zillow or Realtor.com or any $19.99 a month thing that people try to sell you that you end up spending $1,000 a month on? I always challenge agents, why don't you figure out how much you're paying per lead? I just spent a week with an agent who runs a $70 million team. He knows the number of how much each Zillow lead, how much each Boomtown lead, how much each whatever other selling services leads cost. So when he looks at the agent's production, he also knows the expense that agent cost him. Right? When you're doing that, then you're at a team at a high level. So if an agent closes a deal or two, he doesn't always look at it as that's a great profitable agent because he knows how much it's costing him per agent. So why teams could be great, the downfall of the teams are you can spend all this time, money, energy, coaching, bringing up an agent, and if you aren't offering them massive value, they can A, leave your team and be their own agent because they figured out what you're doing. Or B, they really weren't that good and you shouldn't have hired them in the first place. And you just wasted all that time, money, and energy. So before we start going on about how to build a team, I really just want people to think of like, what could be the downfalls of actually running a team? Because that's the side that's not talked about enough in this business. Okay, and then I get this question. All right, Carl, when should I start a team? Let me ask you guys, when do you think it's a good place to start a team?
Probably like January, February, slower times.
See,
Volume-wise, business.
and this question too, no, I agree with that, but this question is not more of a time frame during the year. But what point in your business should you say, all right, I need to start looking to implement a team? And let me clarify.
When you feel you're leaving money on the table, like you have leads that you can't service,
Okay.
and you feel like you're leaving money on the table.
Right. No, and I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. So when do you hire? When the stuff is getting in the way and you have more business and leads that you can get to. Now, asterisks, with an administrative assistant. And we're gonna go into this more. But when you realize that your time, you are maximized, that's when it's good to start looking into getting a team member. All right? When you're as effective and as efficient as you can be with your time and you have allocated to your career and you have mastered the art of lead generation. If your business is a roller coaster, right? High, 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 low, 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 high, 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 low, 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 it's very tough to have a team. I always say in this business, right? You can't take the highs too highs and you can't take the lows too lows because this business will drive you nuts. And if you're like that as a single agent, imagine if you have two agents looking at you to help generate leads and you don't have that consistent flow of business, you're really going to feel the pressure. So the perfect time to start, when I started my team, I had about 35 listings. And it got to the point where it was physically impossible for me to run the buyer leads and sleep, right? And this was not even with paid leads. I just had such a large listing inventory, right? Like I always say, if you have a lot of listings, you'll have a lot of buyer leads. And they're gonna be the best buyer leads there are. Better than Zillow, better than Trulia, better than all the other 7,000 websites that sell you leads. You want buyers, get a lot of listings. So, all right, so now you're at the point you're thinking about getting a team, then you gotta start thinking about what to delegate. My first admin I hired, she was breathing and wanted to work. I'm like, oh, this is great. She comes in for an interview. I sat there and bragged about myself for a half hour. And I'm like, do you want the job? She's like, yeah, I could do this job. I'm like, great, that was a good interview. All I did was brag about myself. I was like, I'm 25. I was like, I'm doing all this business and I need help. Do you want to help me? She's like, yes. I was like, great. I thought I was a genius. She comes in day one. I look at her. She looks at me. I said, so what are we doing? She goes, you tell me. I go, I thought you knew what we were doing. She's like, I have no clue what we're doing. I'm like, this is going to be a disaster, Carl. Good job. Good thing you got to brag about yourself, though. So you got to feel so cool for an hour. Right? It was a disaster. She stared at me, I stared at her, and this is the same story. I was hanging out with a Keller Williams agent at Hoboken, Dave DeVoe. We had the same exact conversation. He said, I hired my first assistant, I stared at her, she stared at me. I said, I did the same exact thing. It is so common in this business. It is so common. So you gotta figure out what you wanna delegate. I must make the most effective, efficient use of my time, right? I figured out I was really good at prospecting in this business. I figured out I was really bad at filling out a contract, right? I would have to fill out a contract and it just weighed on me like, oh my God, I gotta fill this out. And then like I do it, I'm like, well, okay, that really wasn't that bad. But I worried about it for 2 hours instead of taking the 5 minutes just to fill out the contract. Or I had to like fill out a listing agreement. I'm like, oh, right, paperwork was not my strength. Lead generation, the sales was my strength. So I figured out if I had to hire, and I was doing a lot of property management, me dealing with PSE&G was not my strength. I think I might still be banned from calling PSE&G. Because if anyone dealt with the utility companies doing property management, it's a nightmare. Right? So you gotta know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Right? I must be at my highest and best use at all times. I said, listen, if I can hire an admin to take some of this stuff off my plate and gives me 1 more hour a day to prospect, it's worth it. I must eliminate my peaks and valleys results. This is what I was talking about with the business. When you hire a team, it should help you delegate things so you can focus on just having consistent business. I must be wealthy and thus need wealth determiners, right? If you really want to build a business, you got to have people on board they can delegate things to help you build it. I must build a business and live at the highest level. This is the reasons you want to delegate. You want to free up your time, and in essence, you want to help create and grow a business. Right? There's only two ways to increase your income. You either work more or you leverage. Only two ways. And lately, I'm not more into the do more part. Right? There's only so much time in a day. So let's talk about it. All right, great. I'm going to be a team leader. Here's a great quote from Tony Dungy. And if you don't know who Tony Dungy is, he used to coach the Indianapolis Colts when Peyton Manning was there during the peak. The secret to success is good leadership, and good leadership is all about making the lives of your team members / workers better. If you start a team and you do not have this attitude, it's not going to work. You have to want to see other people succeed. One of the reasons I bought a real estate brokerage was because I wanted to see other people succeed. And I wanted to help. There's a great book that if you're going to be a team leader, you should read that I should have put up there. It's called The Go-Giver. And it's all about the more you give, the more you receive. The more you help people grow, the more you get back in return. All right, so now I'm like, all right, now I'm going to be a team leader. What roles do I have? One, you have to provide the mission and the vision. Talented people who are going to work on your team are going to want to work and know why they're working with you. What's the end goal? What's the reason? What's the why? And it's not all about making money. You have to recruit. Got to be able to recruit agents to be on your team that are going to fit into your mission and your vision. You have to consult. If your team is failing, it's not because of your team, it's because of you. It starts from the top down. If you can't help your people grow, you're not going to go anywhere. If you just hire an administrative assistant and stare at them while they stare at you, and you're not able to help them help you, it's not their fault. It's your fault. It was my fault when I hired that admin, and it lasted like 2 weeks. It wasn't her fault. It was my fault. 'Cause I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't screen. I didn't inspire her. Prepare team goals and hold team accountable to the goals. If you're investing a lot of time, money, and effort into people on your team, you want to keep them accountable, and you just don't want to do it once. This is a consistency thing. You can't just meet with the team member once and say, how's everything going? Okay, great, see you in a year. If you have any questions, don't bother me, because I'll just get rid of you. And it sounds silly, but in the reality, this is what a lot of people do. Right? If you're going to be the team leader and you have a buyer's agent with you, you really want to have to help them grow. You have to keep them accountable. You want to see what their conversion rate is. You want to see where they're weak, and you want to help them grow. That's why they're with you. You got to hold weekly meetings. Right? Even as a broker owner, I have weekly staff meetings. It just keeps everybody on the same page. You gotta pay bills. When you're a team leader, you're paying for lead gen, probably paying some type of office fee, probably helping them out with whatever to get started. It's part of your responsibility financially. And I tell people, if you're not ready to take on some financial responsibility, it's probably not gonna really work as a team leader. This one's gonna sound crazy. You should have a budget. You should know what you're spending on lead generation. You should be tracking the lead generation. You should be able to say, I gave this agent 35 leads and you haven't converted any, or none are in the pipelines. And that's something, once you're tracking this and you have a budget, you're able to sit down and actually consult with that agent. Okay, you've gotten $5,000 worth of leads. What's the problem? How can I help? Is it a lead quality? Is it a lead conversion? Is it a closing issue? Which issue is it, so I can help coach you and grow so we get better numbers? Because not everyone you hire is going to come in and just knock it out of the park. I was just reading the other day, the percentage of people that make it in this business in the first 6 years, the first 5 years is 80%. All right, so it's the 80-20 rule the other way. Most people don't last. You have to review your financial statement monthly. If you're not reviewing your financials that you're spending on the team, this could go back to the downfall of the team, the financial part. Now you're working twice as hard closing deals so you can pay for the finances of these buyer's agents who aren't closing deals. You gotta identify talent as a team leader. You gotta be able to, when you talk to somebody, you have to be identify whether or not that person's talented and could be a good fit. You're the rainmaker. You gotta be able to train people. Training is not most agents' most comfortable spot. But if you're bringing someone on and they're latching on to your mission and vision, they want to learn from you. So you have to be able to train. So what do you guys think is the most important thing when building a successful real estate team? Talent. If you have good, talented people around you, you will have a good real estate team. Like, all right, Carl, you keep saying talent. What is talent? Someone who is a perfect match for the job description and possesses the skills, knowledge, and competencies you desire. Then you hear this: when I have money, I'll hire talent. Or when I hire talent, I'll have the money. So, personal example is, I had to recreate my business at one point. Long story. I had to recreate my business at one point. And I started getting busy. And I had a lot of different projects going on. And I didn't have an assistant. And I was like, well, do I hire the assistant now? I was like, I have a lot of stuff going on, but I don't have a lot of the finances coming in. And I said, Carl, don't make the same mistake again. So I hired an assistant probably a little prematurely. That assistant was able to help me grow and take a lot of stuff off the plate, so that early investment paid me back tenfold. Right? When you hire the right person, it will help. I mean, I basically had to rebuild my business from scratch, which I was able to, but it was happening at such a quick pace, and I was so confident in my lead generation ability that I knew this person would help. Some people thought, you're crazy, you should just, I'm not crazy, I need to do it. And it was the best decision I made. You're truly better off by yourself than hiring substandard talent. And this goes back to the story of my first assistant, where I'm like, oh yeah, you're gonna be great. You just listen to me for an hour talk about myself. You're the best, right? Those 2 weeks, a month I lost with her, I would have been better off being on my own. And I've seen this happen to a lot of agents where they hire substandard admin and it just blows up. Okay. Hiring talent is a benefit, not a cost. Here, a bad hire costs you money, time, and opportunity. A good hire saves you money, doesn't cost you opportunity. A great hire frees your times, makes you a lot of money, and creates multiple opportunities. Hire slow, fire fast. I was just interviewing for somebody, an administrative assistant. They thought this person was great. Said, would you mind interviewing for me? Sure, no problem. Give me the resume. I get the resume. They worked at a company. I'm gonna call it ABC Capital. Like, all right. So I'm interviewing questions, tell me about some of the biggest challenges you had at ABC Capital. She goes, well, ACB Capital, some of the greatest challenges I had. ACB Capital. All right, kept going on, kept talking about it. She's like, ACB Capital. I'm like, can you do me a favor? She's like, what? I'm like, can you phonetically spell for me your company? And she looks at me weird. She's like, sure. A is in Alpha, C is in Charlie, B is in Brian. I look down at the resume. It's Alpha Banana Charlie. I'm like, one more time, phonetically spell it for me. I'm like, there's no way she misspelled the name of her company on her resume while she sits here and tells me how detail-oriented she is. I'm again, just phonetically spell it for me. Alpha Charlie Banana. I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, do you have any questions for me? I said, no, thanks for coming in for the interview. I'm like, you gotta look at the details. I'm like, how can you tell me you're detail-oriented and you can't spell your company name right? All right, so she's out. I get to interview somebody else. Again, I've interviewed hundreds of people. So when you interview that many people, you start seeing stuff like this and you start seeing patterns. Somebody else, great, detail-oriented, yada, yada, yada. All right. Her email on her resume was marysmith@gmail. That's it. She's really like, oh, okay. So I start asking her about her resume. I'm like, you worked here for this long. She's like, oh, that was like a contract, temporary position. I'm like, huh? I'm like, all right, well, tell me about this job. Well, I always ask, what are some of the greatest challenges you had at this position? How did you overcome those challenges? Talented people come across challenges. Talented people overcome challenges. Tell me about the challenges you had at this. Oh, that was a contract job. I'm like, another contract? I'm like, you have it listed here as a full-time job, right? She was trying to cover up the fact that she hadn't had a full-time job in 7 years and she's been doing part-time contract job. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but listen, if I can't figure out your resume while I'm reading to you and you can't put .com on your contact information, you're probably not the right fit as a talented person. Very nice, just not the right fit. So there's clues when you're interviewing people that just stand out. And what happens is most people go into the interview and say, this is what we need done, blah, blah, blah. And the person goes, I can do it because they need a job. And then you hire them and it blows up. Hire slow, fire fast. And if you get someone in and you think they're not the right fit, you're probably right, you better get rid of them. Right? And it sounds kind of cutthroatish and mean, but it's just reality of business. I have so many interview stories, but that ABC Capital one's my favorite. And that just happened like 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, you can't be serious. Oh, and then they sent a follow-up email and things were misspelled. Right? Like, good, like, okay, you're supposed to send a follow-up email, blah, 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 but don't misspell things and don't have really bad grammar. And I can't say anything because I misspell everything. And my wife's a third grade teacher, so she always reminds me how bad my grammar is. But there's also programs on the computer to make sure you spell things correctly and your grammar's correct, which I'm smart enough to use. So anyway, so that's some of those situations. So You gotta think about it. If you hired someone that was a great hire, what would happen if you freed your times? What other opportunities would come your way? If you hired someone really great and it got you what I call out of the weeds, right, where you're just so busy on your deals and putting out fire. If you have a great hire and you got to take some of that off your plate, like what other opportunities would open for you to flourish? If you wanted that. Because I'm also a big advocate that not everybody needs a team. There are practitioners there that want to do everything there. I hear it all the time. Nobody does it as good as me. There's one thing I learned in this life. There's a lot of people out there who do things a lot better than me. I do some things good, but even the stuff I'm really good at, I usually find someone who does it even better. It's just about finding those people. All right. A word got left out of there. The beautiful East Brunswick, Days Inn. All right. Tim, did you get that on video? Anyway, so I left out a word of this, but who do you think the most important hire is when you're first starting to build a team? Who should be that first hire?
Admin assistant.
Admin assistant. 110%. This is going to go back to what I was talking about before. Some people want to start a team and they just they'll hire a buyer's agent. So it's just them and the buyer's agent. They give them leads. They're running the leads. They're not converting the leads. The team leader's like, this is not working. Why did I do this? This buyer agent stinks. Right? And I always say, well, if you hired an administrative assistant to take care of a lot of the stuff you don't like, what would you have done if you took those leads? If that person wasn't good, what if you took it? Would you have a higher conversion rate than that agent? So this agent that you thought you're going to give these leads, they're going to start closing deals, and you're going to be making money sitting around doing nothing but drinking margaritas and pina coladas, that doesn't happen. What if you hired somebody, a really talented administrative assistant, and all you had to do was go out and sell? How would your conversion rates have been? Better, right?
It's normal. I mean, you build your business from being a new agent over the years, become a good agent, and then it's like adding a turbocharger to your engine. Huh?
Right.
The administrative assistant is your turbocharger. Your business grows, it gets so big that you then can feed some buyer agents.
Right.
But that's a logical progression, not the other way around.
And a lot of people skip that progression. I think the trend is more people skip that progression than go through that progression. Right? Hiring a very talented administrative assistant in a real estate business will change your business. When you could just focus on selling and that's what you like to do, and you have someone to take care of the back end, the paperwork, the transaction coordination, that's going to help your business grow. And I know because I went the first route that was wrong. And then when I went the right of having administrative help and doing it that way, it grew. And my time was a lot better. People joke around, they say I never look busy. I mean, I am busy, but it's all about having the right pieces. So, what should be the task of an administrative? Manage your website, email, answer calls. When you list a lot of properties, the most frustrating phone calls you get is, hi, this is Bob from ABC Realty. Is that property available? I'm like, oh, you mean the property that says active in the on the MLS? I'm like, yes. Or you get the phone call, a lot of that stuff takes up time. Right? And I talk about it in my listing inventory training. When you have all these listings, I mean, you want to cut down a lot of this stuff. Right? Yes. You want to set up an open house. I mean, I don't know if I know how to go on the websites and set up open houses for the public. But it needs to be done. You need to have that person there that can help you, so you're not focusing on those aspects, you're focusing more on the lead generation. All right? Create and update a vendor list. right? If you're a team leader and you have a lot of listings, or even if you're doing a lot of buy sides, who are the home inspectors that you're using? The mortgage reps. You know, if you're a listing, so you need someone to communicate with the homeowner of, hey, just to let you know, the home inspection is going to be on Wednesday between 9 and 12. Right? And if you get someone that's really talented and you have a lot of deals going, it's going to free up your time immensely to keep that going. And that's going to eliminate the peaks and valleys. Because what happens? A lot of agents get 5, 6 deals under contract. They put 110% effort into getting those 5 or 6 deals closed. Then they close and they're like, Carl, I'm slow. Because you took all that time and energy to get those 5 or 6 deals closed that you weren't prospecting for new business. And I'm not saying it in a bad way, like I know it happens. And that's why a lot of people, when I interview some agents and they say, you know, Carl, I'm doing 5 million. I couldn't even think about doing 10 million. I have no time doing 5. How am I going to do 10? It's because they don't know how to eliminate those peaks and valleys with some good help. Or they're not systemized enough, where all they're doing is just running, that they never have a second to breathe. Mail appropriate letters and notes. So this is what else happens, right? All right, no, I love doing referrals. I'm a big Buffini person, but I've been so busy I haven't done a mail-in in 7 months. So why are you slow? But if you have that admin person who's good and talented, and they're able to take some of that stuff off your plate, then it helps you generate the business. So you, again, eliminate the peaks and valleys. I went through this. I used to do a ton of short sales, right? I don't want to do short sales, all the agents said. I was like, all right, if none of you want to do them, I'll do them. I'm just going to systemize it, though. But then what happened was I had so many short sales, I wasn't getting more, whatever else. So I was able to hire someone to help me do direct mailing to people who are in need of short sales, which was able to generate me listings, which more than covered the staff salary. Because I also knew how much it cost me per mailing, and I also knew how much it cost me per listing to acquire based on my marketing. Order supplies, right? Has anyone ever gone to like go to a listing appointment or do this and they realize like, oh, I have no cards, or I have no pack, I don't have my packet, I don't have this, I don't have that. I do it all the time. Does anyone here like really enjoy putting listings in the MLS? Has anyone ever had a listing and you're like, I have to get this into the MLS, and it just like weighs on you? Right? And you sit there and you try to like write the description. I mean, I'm terrible at writing descriptions. I mean, we have an agent in our office, his name is Olivier. If you want to see someone who knows how to write descriptions, he is like the Edgar Allan Poe of MLS descriptions. I try to write an MLS description. I'm like, there's a kitchen, there's some bathrooms. We even throw in a living room, right? Like I'm MLS data, like I am the worst. It takes time, right? Upload the pictures. My pictures come in crooked. Why? It's professional pictures and they still come in crooked. It's like I have a target on me that says crooked pictures. But, and I'm saying this stuff because this is the stuff you got to start thinking about what you could delegate if you build a team. Got to have that appointment. So to me, keeping my calendar is really important. Stay on top of this stuff. Has anyone ever had that deal that just spirals out of control because you just didn't pay attention to it? It happens. When you're doing a lot of business and you don't have the systems in place, it happens. Said before.
Question.
Yeah.
With that kind of list there, that would pretty much determine that maybe not right away, but pretty soon that assistant then would have to have a real estate license to do some of those things, right?
Well, most of that stuff on that list, they don't need a license for. You don't have to have a license for the transaction coordination part.
No, that's cool.
You don't have to have a license for the MLS data entry.
If they use your entry code here?
You can get, but you can get them their own login as an admin.
Yeah.
There's some real estate offices where the admin put in all the listings. In South Jersey, it's very popular like that. In South Jersey, a lot of the office admins are the ones that write the contract, because what they do is they do a letter of intent. They do like almost like a one-page, not letter of intent, or whatever they call it. And then the admins do the contracts. So a lot of that, but when you start getting to a higher level, you usually get them licensed. So there's no blurred lines of where you go. But I've had an assistant of mine for 2 years who's in the Philippines. His name is Johan. If he left me, I would be like devastated. He's been with me 2 years. He never calls out, and he just drills out work. You know, there's talent across the whole world, right? But again, just because he was virtual didn't mean I didn't spend time with him. I had to train him. I had to screen him. Guess what? 2 people make mistakes along the way. I've seen people hire someone the first time the admin makes a mistake. They're like, this admin's no good, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, why don't you take this as a learning experience so how you can make sure more mistakes don't happen down the line? Because it might have been just as much as your fault as the admin's fault. Right? So again, be slow to hire, quick to fire, and identify the role of the individual. You have to see what people's strengths are, and we're going to go in a little bit to figure that out. If somebody's a really good numbers person and likes doing numbers and spreadsheets and this, and they don't like making cold calls, don't hire them to call your leads. It's just not going to work. You've got to identify what people's strengths are, and then you have to leverage the strengths. Do not try to leverage people's weaknesses. If I got hired to be an administrative assistant, I would be terrible. I would get fired. I just wouldn't do it. Or I would do it really badly. And my first job out of college, I got hired as a job where I wasn't really supposed to be an administrative assistant. It turned into me being an admin, and I quit in a month. Because it wasn't what I was good at. I didn't enjoy it. I would leave work, and my first thought would be, oh my God, I have to go back in 12 hours. But if you run a real estate team and you hired me to be an inside sales agent and just call all your leads all day, like I'd probably crush it. Because that's my strength. So it's really identifying what people's strengths are and then leveraging those strengths. So that's what I was talking about, the matching person skills. Just find well-rounded people, man. You gotta find people you like. You're gonna be working with them. I mean, I'm lucky. I really enjoy the people I work with. If I didn't enjoy the people I didn't work with, I wouldn't want to do it. All right, so now we're talking about talent. Where do you find some of these talents? Again, this talks about just don't limit your recruiting of talented people to people that have licenses. I was just out in Denver for a couple of days at the RE/MAX headquarters, and I was talking to this guy, and they were asking me this question. They're like, yeah, well, with our team, we really want to find people who have been in the business for like 2, 3, 4 years, who aren't doing much business. This way, we don't have to teach them how to write contracts and stuff. I said, your strategy is, you're not going to hire people doing that well. So you don't have to teach them how to write a contract. You're going to give them leads, and they already can't convert leads. Sounds like a really good strategy. And they just looked at me and they go, you don't agree with us, do you? I said, I would rather hire someone who doesn't know how to write a contract, but is really talented and is newly licensed and hungry, and give them leads. Getting them licensed is the easy part. So these are places. Monster.com, Indeed.com. I tell you, I just interviewed someone off an Indeed post, right? Newly licensed. And I sat down, right? And newly licensed is a little trickier. Tell me about your experience when you were at college or in high school. What were some of your greatest accomplishments? Right? I just want to play this out for you how it goes. What are some of the greatest accomplishments you had in high school? You know, I was a really good student, top 10% of my class, and I worked really hard. What were some of the biggest challenges you had in high school? My time management. I was like, she's stealing this line from me? I'm thinking in my head, she's like, all right, so what do you mean time management? She goes, I was involved in so many sports and other activities that my challenge was to still be able to keep my grades up because I knew I wanted to go to a good college. It's pretty good. Next step, college. Well, college, one of my biggest things was, one of my greatest accomplishments, I graduated like cum laude. I was like, I knew people in college that graduated cum laude. I was not one of them, but I know people in my college that did. What are some of your biggest challenges? Like, again, I was so involved in student government, all this other activities that I wanted to make sure I still kept my grades up. I was like, see a pattern forming, exactly. That's great. So I switch gears. So we're talking a little bit about the real estate business and her current career. She sat there across the table and looked at me and she goes, I will quit my job and go all in on real estate. But you see what I mean about the pattern with somebody, even though they don't have a license? So then I said to her, so I interviewed somebody else. I asked the same questions. What were some of your greatest accomplishments in high school? I was pretty popular. I had fun. What were some of your greatest challenges? I didn't really have any. I was like, all right. What about college? What are your greatest accomplishments? I graduated. What are your greatest some of your challenges? You ask a lot of questions. That's what the person said to me.
Wow. An interview?
On an interview. Because they're thinking it's real estate. They're thinking anybody takes me. That's what they hear. I could go work anywhere. I could show up in sneakers and jeans. I don't have to impress anybody. It's real estate. They're lucky if I come work for them, right? That's the attitude you get, some of these new licenses from what they hear in real estate school. I asked the same questions to two different people. You can just see the patterns. This doesn't mean the person's going to come in and obviously be successful, right? And it's funny, I had somebody ask me these questions. I'm like, I want to reverse engineer it. Like, what was your greatest challenge in high school? And I realized my greatest challenge, my greatest accomplishments were the same thing. Right? My greatest accomplishment was my wrestling career. My biggest challenge was my wrestling career. Because I had to cut weight. I didn't get to hang out at Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner because I was too worried about making weight for whatever else. I wasn't the best wrestler. I had to work really hard at being mediocre. But that was my greatest accomplishment, my greatest challenge. In college, what was my greatest accomplishment? I went to college with Tim, so he's not allowed to answer any of these questions. What was my greatest accomplishment in college? I went to a college that I was really not smart enough to get into. I was not that book smart. I had to work twice as hard as some other people just to get through college. And I admit it. I don't know how I even got into grad school after it, but that was my biggest accomplishment. And what was your biggest challenge? Is I had to work twice as hard as everybody else just to graduate. And I was still 33rd to the bottom of my class. But that didn't count the 70 kids that failed out and couldn't grit through and make it through, right? So you start seeing patterns of success. These are great questions when you're interviewing an admin, you're interviewing a buyer's agent. The clues leave success. Now, reverse engineer that. I sit down with the new agent. I say, yeah, my name is Carl Sanfilippo. I've been in the business 11 years. I've done this, 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 and this. You want to come work with me? Yeah. They join, like, oh, this agent's no good. No, it's not the agent's fault. It was my fault. Because I didn't screen the person. I didn't ask questions. Success leaves clues at all positions. When you're interviewing, it's not about you, it's about them. Craigslist. You can find talented people on Craigslist, but you will find a lot of garbage stuff. I don't want to say people, but garbage resumes and whatever else. So what I do, if I hire an admin off of Craigslist, I put a screener. You always got to put a screener when you're hiring. When people say, what do you mean by a screener? I used to do this as a screening. you know, a job application, looking to hire a real estate assistant, please fax me your resume to 908 blah, 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 blah. My fax number was an e-fax number because I don't fax. And people would email me the resume. As soon as I got the email, the resume, I delete it. Because the instructions were to go fax it. So if you can't follow instructions now, you can't follow instructions later. And I would have a lot of respect for people when I would get a fax from the public library with someone's resume. They read the instructions and they're willing to go up and beyond what most people are willing to do. Most people say, I would get emails. I know you said to fax the resume, but I figured I could just email. And goodbye. You can't read directions. But think about that. How many people have faxes in their house? So they went to the library, faxed it. That shows somebody who, A, follows directions, and B, is willing to go above and beyond to get things done. And those are the kind of people I want around me. Right. Local colleges is a great source, especially if you're looking for some part-time help. Again, talented. There's talent around the world. Everyone always tells me I have nice looking Google presentations. I use Google Slides. I don't know how to use it. I pay someone on Fiverr in Malaysia to do my slides. If you saw what this originally looked like, you would laugh. Do I really want to know how to use Google Slides like a pro? Not really. Right? For $100, they can make the presentation look a lot better than I could do. And it frees up my time. I think I'm good. Put on a hat. So Fiverr's really good. Upwork is another website that's really good, especially in the beginning. If you have like little semi-projects that you just need to kind of get, I call them like a one and done, like a one-off. There's some really great sites. My guy Johan in the Philippines he can call people and his phone number rings 732. I mean, the technology's there. You know, referrals, attorneys, mortgage lenders, title reps. These people come across a lot of other realtors and a lot of people looking for positions. To me, my favorite is still when I interview someone because they got recommended to me by somebody. And they already seen their pattern of success. Advancement from within. If you're someone in your organization that's doing really well and they want a bigger opportunity, that's always great too. All right, the hiring process. At first we screen. If you do something like Indeed.com, what I do to screen is I say, tell me a little bit about why you think you'd be the perfect fit for this position. If somebody just sends me the resume and they write nothing, delete. So now you get to really narrow it down without having to read 300 resumes. I mean, I don't even read it. Delete, 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 delete. Can't follow instructions, delete. Right? Assessment personality tests. There's a bunch of different ones out there. I usually use Tony Robbins' DISC profile test. It's free. Your person's either going to be a high D, a high I, a high S, or a high C. When you're hiring for admin, C is what you want a lot of. Rocco, hope you don't mind I pick on you. Rocco, you were with me for about 6 months. I said, Rocco, take this DISC test. Why am I taking this DISC test? I guarantee you're a high D, high I. How do you know that? I said, take the test. Rocco, what were you, a 99D and like a 98I? I didn't even have them take the test. Would I want Rocco to be my administrative assistant? Probably not. No offense, Rocco. But that's also why you're great at prospecting. It's what you're good at. All right? Johan in the Philippines, I gave a DISC test to, was 99C. Very detail oriented. Dots his I's and crosses T's. Reminds me all the times of the stuff I missed, as I'm a high D, high I. So I like to hire what I'm not good at. It's crazy how these tests work. I mean, I literally pegged Rocco. I said, try it. And it's spot on. I did it with my wife. I said, you're a high C. I was like, you're so much more detail-oriented, smarter. I mean, she's so much better than me in so many different ways. I gave her the test, spot on 99C. People always look at me funny when I say I gave my wife the DISC test, but it's always good to know people's personalities. The interview process, which we talked about, man, really finding out the people's stories. I even say to people like, listen, we're gonna spend the next hour together. What's funny is if I don't like them, it's usually 15 minutes. But I just wanna get to know you. I wanna get to know what makes you tick. You can ask questions about me, but I really wanna learn about you, and we can see if we're a good fit for each other. Interview, then you check people's references, story, rapport. I mean, if you're gonna work with somebody all the time, you gotta get along with them. And then you eliminate, meet and eliminate. It's the process. Guys didn't probably think a team building was gonna have so much about hiring. But it's the most important part in building your team. These are just some general questions to ask people when you're interviewing. Tell me about you, your family, recreation, hobbies. What formal education or seminars have you participated in and when? Describe your reading habits. What's the best book you've read in the past 12 months and why? I love asking this question. Right? I had someone tell me once Cosmo. I was like, really? Yeah. Tell me about your previous jobs, your likes, your dislikes, your challenges, your accomplishments. Or your most and least successful jobs. What sorts of obstacles have you faced in present, recent positions, and what did you do? I have a great one. I interviewed somebody for one of the agents, and so we were talking about our past job. I said, what are some of the biggest challenges you had? Well, our company used to do photography, drone shots, and everything for realtors. Part of my job was to confirm dates and times with realtors. So I would call the realtor and say, hey, Bob, we confirmed for 2 o'clock tomorrow. The realtor would say yes. I would send the person out there. Bob would call me screaming. I just started laughing. So Bob called me screaming saying that I never confirmed the appointment. They didn't know the photographer was going to be there at 2. And basically, I'm the worst. So I developed a system that we would text the agent and they would have to text us back yes to confirm the appointment. So when Bob called me and said, hey, you didn't tell me about that, I was like, Bob, why'd you text me here confirming the appointment? Being in real estate so long, I found that story pretty amusing because I could picture the Bobs of the world who would do that. But I thought to myself, I said, wow, that's a real problem and that was a real solution. That's the kind of people I like to be around. You want people who can identify problems and identify how to fix them. And it so happens that the story was so relatable being in my position that I knew exactly what she was talking about, and the story held a lot of clout. You know, why do you think people fail? How are your references? Describe your work habits and why. What are the biggest mistakes you've made in the past 5 years, and what have you learned from them? Because everyone makes mistakes. We're all human. How have you changed in recent years? How many hours per week do you work on average? I like asking this question because I like when someone's like, I work 80 hours a week. I'm like, all right, relax. No, you don't. Don't try to impress me. You work only you're 10 hours a day, 8 hours. You know, there's not even 8 days in the week. You work 80 hours. But some people do that because they want to show off, right? What motivates you? Everybody thinks that money is the motivator. Just like every listing agent goes into a listing appointment thinking money is the #1 motivator, and it's not. It might be I want to spend more time with my family. I want to make sure I could get to my kids' soccer games. It's not always the money. And realtors always go in And they do that in listing appointments. They think that all people care about is the commission and the price, when it's not true. Most realtors just don't go into the listing presentation asking enough questions to find out what's really important to the seller. How do you motivate yourself to do something really well that you don't like to do? I put Rocky music on and I punch a bag, you know, but you ask these questions so you hear some funny answers. How much money are you being making in the next 12 months, 3 years, 5 years? How have you been your career influence and why? How satisfied are you with your balance in life? You want people who are balanced, in my opinion. Do you believe in general goal setting, planning? Why? What are your goals written down? What are your examples of the biggest challenges you faced and overcome? Can you tell me about a time that you have showed great tenacity? I always like to ask, tell me about a situation that was really tough and how you gritted it out. I love that question because you know what, in business, it's not about how you are during the good times, it's about how you're doing in the bad times. Especially this business. This business, if you don't have grit, you're not gonna make it. I'm just a believer in that. You know, people ask me that questions. I've been through some really tough, challenging times that you have to work through and grit out. How much feedback do you like to get and in what form? What are you looking for in the next job and company? What's your vision for the perfect job? All right, so you got your team. Now you hired your administrator. Who do you think the next hire should be? You have the admin, your buyer's agent. The most successful teams I see are the teams that have a big listing inventory. Because I don't care what anyone says. I get the calls from Zillow, right? They got that like crazy Washington number. I get the calls from all the other lead sources. The absolute best buyer leads are the ones off your listings. To me, that's just a fact. They're the best buyer leads, right? Especially if they're called off a sign. They know the neighborhood, they know the development, they've seen the outside of the house. Has anyone ever run an internet lead and you get to the front of the house and they don't even want to go in? I've had that. It stinks. So the best I see teams are the ones with large listing inventories. So now you have the large listing inventories, you're running all the leads you can, all the buyer leads you can, and then it just, some gives, right? You have the admin, you need to add another layer. To me, the buyer's agent's the next level. Buyer specialist, you want them to attend the closings. Why? Because you want them to attend the closings because you want them to get referrals. But you want to make follow-up calls, you want them to write the offers, negotiate the contracts. You want to put all the buyers through the buyer's process, right? Whether your buyer's process is, a lot of people like to do the buyer consultation. Whatever that process is, you want to teach and groom your buyer's agent. Hold open houses. I have not always been the biggest fan of holding open houses for lead generation, but in this market, it's pretty powerful. People are having open houses, 30 people coming through, 20 people coming through. On a slow market, it's tough. You can have open houses and nobody comes through, but in a market like this, open houses, buyers are coming through. Follow up on all buyer sign calls. Be accountable weekly. Complete contracts, addendums. Memorize initial buyer scripts. You want your buyer's agents to be able to convert. Converting internet leads is different than converting sign calls, right? You also want to be able to track your buyer's agents, and you also want to be able to systemize how they're distributed phone calls. The simplest way is this. Get a Google Voice phone number for free. Make it a local 732 phone number. Put it on your sign instead of your cell phone. And this is at the point where you're like, I'm not working buyers anymore, I just have too many listings, right? Put it on the sign, they call that number. If you have one, say 2 buyer's agent, it automatically rings both their phones at the same time. You can set it up so it has the phone number ringing on the phone. You have them save it as sign calls. They know to jump on the call. Realtors are the worst at picking up their phones. For being in a sales business, nobody picks up their phone. Listen, I'm guilty of it too. But if your phone rings and it says sign call and you're a buyer's agent, you're going to pick up the call. And then you can get another number. There's services like Better Voice, CallRail. You put another phone number in, call them tracking phone numbers. That phone number rings, it reads Zillow, Trulia leads, internet leads, whatever. They'll pick it up. Problem is if it's just coming in with the number, they don't have that same sense of urgency. And then you're able to see everybody that called that number. Wow, we've had 35 sign calls this month and not one contract. What's happening? Where's it falling apart? But if you have no way to track it, what's 0 contracts of 0? Because you don't know how many leads there were. Everyone always asks, what do you think the compensation should be? I think buyer's agents on a team should get a 40%. Everyone says 50%. I think that's wrong. Who here has worked at Century 21, Big Box, forget the brand. You work at your first company. And typically in the past, you go on a 50-50 split, 0 leads. Right? 0 leads. Create your own, get a deal, whatever else. Here's you're offering massive value. Administrative support, leads, coaching, training, your expertise. As a team leader, you must pay yourself first. I've seen people do the setups and the commission structures are different. Then even when they close something, by the time they spend all their time, energy, money on leads, they're not really making anything. So that's how I think it should be set up. And I think if you offer enough value, there's not a reason someone wouldn't want it. Then you're like, all right, you're humming along, you got one buyer's agent, you got your admin. Now you guys are starting to throw a lot of deals on the table. Your admins can't do all the transaction coordination. The next layer to me is you get that transaction coordinator. Contract comes, circulate the contract, communicate with the attorneys, follow up with the lenders. When the buyer's agent and team leader are more productive being in the field and following up on their deals when you need the transaction coordinator. Make sure the home inspection's complete, follow up on all contingencies and closing being scheduled. Who here's had a deal and the mortgage commitment date's come and gone, you got no clue what's going on with the mortgage.
Transaction coordinator, the third person that you're adding onto the team. Like at the beginning, do you feel that what this transaction coordinator is doing still an admin can, at the lower end, when you're still starting off, can you manage?
Yes.
So I guess it's up to you to realize when now the transactions, the volume is growing, where now it's becoming overwhelming for the admin.
Right. But I would rather work with me as the team leader, listing agent, my one buyer agent who's out there killing it, and our admin and our transaction coordinator. So all I'm doing is talking to sellers, listing houses, generating leads. All my buyer agents doing out there is showing houses, getting contracts done, and then the transaction coordinator takes over the file and they're out selling another house. And it becomes a lot. So the next step is really becoming to get a listing coordinator. And what the listing coordinator will do with this too is, all right, I'm gonna tell the story. I've told it before. I had a listing, I didn't put a sign out on the house. It was a residential listing, I just got busy, no sign on the house. Do you think that was a happy phone call when I've been on it for a week and there's no sign on the front of the house? Think I got referrals from that person? I got death threats. I'm an idiot. I know I'm an idiot. What do I say too? Like, you're an idiot. I'm like, I'm an idiot. No, you're an idiot. I'm like, I'm an idiot. But it happens when you start getting like really, really crazy busy. Stuff falls through the crack if you're not systemized. And I've been there when I was not systemized. But you get a listing court, you schedule a photographer. Think about scheduling a photographer for 30 properties, 30 schedules. Right? Make sure the sign and marketing materials are done. And you want to have a listing and never put the flyers in the house, even though the seller told you you wanted flyers? And then they call you like, why are my flyers in my house? What do you think of your realtor? He stinks because he didn't put flyers or she didn't put flyers in my house? I mean, I laugh when I say these type of things because I've been through it and it happens. If you do it right, is this listing coordinator become the point contact with your sellers after you list the house? And again, this all comes down to how you present it during the presentation. This is Sally. Sally's our listing coordinator. You're going to hear from her about feedback, when the photographer is going to come, the marketing. She's going to be your daily point contact, and I'll talk to you. We talk every once a week on the market, whatever. It's all about how you, but if you set the expectation in the beginning and they buy in, that's how you do it. Again, because most people think, no, my seller only wants to talk to me. Communicate with the agents about the availability and status. Because like I said before, those phone calls could drive you nuts. You get them all day. Is the property available? Is the property available? Is the property available? Do you have any offers? Things like that. This is something that that person could take off your plate. Now again, this isn't saying you forget about your seller. You're just providing a business-like higher value to them. And this could be part of your value proposition. That with me, you're never going to say, once you sign the contract, you never heard from me or anyone in my office again. How many here has listed a house that had expired? What didn't you like about your old realtor? Once I signed the contract, I never heard from him or her again. Right? Common, very common. Excuse me. Then you get to the point where it's, you got a bunch of listings, you got buyer's agents, everybody's running around doing everything. Who's going to put the sign up? Who's going to do all the running around? Because there is a lot of running around that comes in. And this could be a licensed person who could open doors and things like that for you. Again, because your time is so crucial at this point. And I was, like I said, I spent the week with someone who does $70 million as a team in Brooklyn. And he says, he's like, the person that I thank the most every day is my runner. Put lock boxes on, put up signs. You know, sometimes in a crunch, he has a camera where they take the pictures. Take the room measurements, deliver the flyers. He does deliver the pre-listing packet to the seller. The lock boxes. He has them identify FSBOs. He's like, I'm paying him to drive around all the time. I have him write down FSBO addresses so we could go after the FSBOs. Drop off the FSBO packets, and make separate house key sets. Sometimes you have to make copies of keys. And what do all these positions have to have in common? These people have to be talented. If you have someone in all these positions and they're really marginal talent, it's not going to work. If you have good people in all these talents, it's what's going to help your team grow. Okay. So to recap, at the top you have your team leader. Then you should get the administrative assistant. Then you want to layer in the buyer's agent. Then a TC, a transaction coordinator. Now, mind you, too, the buyer's agent, you can layer in more as your systems get better and you have more constant leads. Then the listing coordinator, if you're doing a large volume of listings. And then that last piece to really free up your time is the runner. Yeah.
What do you think of these? I've seen similar systems, right? But they have one additional step in it. They have so just pure showing assistants, so licensed people in your office or whatever who wouldn't mind showing a few houses, get a small cut for that. And then you have the full-fledged buyer agent on top of that, maybe sometimes coordinating one or two of those showing guys.
Right. I get the concept of the showing agent. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think really good buyer's agents really show a house well.
More experience.
They're more experienced, they know what to look for. Yeah, instead of someone who's just like, all right, I'm gonna open it up and stand out there and let me know. I think part of the bond you build with a buyer is really when you're showing them that house and you're making that connection in the house. So I mean, I get the showing agent model and I get the reason for it. To me, it's not something I would ever really want to do because I think I want that person to really build that rapport and to really, I'm a big relationship guy. I want them to really build that relationship because I think that's going to help them with referrals. Like, oh, how was it with Bob? Like, oh, Bob, we talked to him twice. I dealt with Sally who kept opening the doors and, you know, she looked bored. So the showing agent model, I try to really stay away from just because I think that's more of a burn and turn with people. And I don't really like that. So we'll talk about a little bit now about building systems and things. Really what you have to do is when you're building a team, and this is really just building a business, is you really want to have manuals and training for each position. Job descriptions. What happens is if that administrative assistant leaves, you want to have all these manuals and trainings and everything so you can plug someone else in. It's so important because if you have this, and the problem is this, it takes a little bit to set up, but once you set it up, it saves you time in the long run. Even manuals about how to put listings in the MLS. And now there's even free programs where you could just record your video screen. You can walk through how to use the MLS on the video screen and then you can save the video. I mean, I've done a lot of that in my office where if someone's out or whatever else, we can still continue to go along. So you want to think about running it as if in manuals, as if you could sell it off and franchise it. That's really all I got. To me, that's sort of the model of what you want to build a perfect team and what you got to really look for. And to me, the most important part is hiring and finding the right people. You do that, the rest of the stuff works itself out. Does anyone have any questions for me? No? Well, listen, I appreciate everybody coming today. If you guys ever have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer them.